They are not scared of history. They are scared of accountability.
Accurate history is teaching white Americans how white slave owners raped, beat, humiliated, mutilated, murdered, and cannibalized their slaves. Accurate history is teaching that George Washington's false teeth were made out of his slaves' teeth. Accurate history is teaching that Abraham Lincoln may have said some words and signed some shit, but he did not physically do anything to free the slaves. The white abolitionists also often get almost total credit for freeing the slaves. I bet you've never even asked yourself what the slaves were doing to free themselves, and the answer to that is most of the fucking work, including giving the ultimatum of war. But then we get a bunch of white people mad that their kids might feel guilty if we teach real history. It's not about your white child's feelings. Teaching accurate history isn't about white people's feelings, but that does sound like something that someone who's only ever been taught a white glorifying version of history would counter with. Ask why we ever felt like we needed to curate a false version of what white people did and did not do to black people to begin with. And then ask yourself why white-ass politicians are verbally attacking real history by calling it slurs, which is, by default, also the act of calling black people slurs.
This is why they ban our history. They ban our history because black history, by definition, is political.
That's right.
Because black people, by definition, are political, right? Our history is political because every story of American greatness, every story of American exceptionalism you want to tell, here we are off to the corner. Say, how do you explain us?
That's right.
Yo, what's up, family? Welcome back to my YouTube space. I am the Kenyan Beast. Now, here's where we get the truth they don't want to hear. And today, we are reacting, or I'm reacting to a very powerful topic, a very powerful message from a lady called Nicole Hannah-Jones. She is a journalist behind the 1619 project. I know you have come across her. If you're a true black power, I know you have come across her. And she's breaking down why black history scares white people. And wow, she got it straight. Just straight from the heart. Now, let's be real for a second. Every time we talk about slavery, racism, or even just the real role black people played in building the country, building America, there's always a pushback. And folks started crying about divisiveness and critical race history, trying to shut the conversation down before it even starts. But the truth is, the truth exposed the lie they have been living, because all of the history, as we always say, white people do not have history. And all this history they have been living in a lie. The lie that they don't want us to know. The lie that they don't want us to expose. And the lie that this country was built on freedom and justice. No, that's a lie. When it was actually built on stolen land and stolen labor. That is the truth. Now, Nicole is one of those voices that cuts through the noise. She doesn't just talk facts. She tells stories with context. She connects the dots between the past and the present. And that's why people try to silence her. Because when you really know your history, when you understand why, or the why between the oppression, behind the fear, you start to move differently. And when you start moving differently, you become a threat. When you start understanding as a black person, you become a threat. In this video, I'm going to play to you. She's going to explain why telling our story fully and truthfully shakes up the entire American identity. And after you hear it, I'm coming back here with my full thoughts, because this ain't just about history. It's about power. It's about perception. And why they don't want us to know who we are, and why they are trying to whitewash the history, and why they're trying to ban books, why they are trying to erase some of the topics. That's all. We are going to talk about it today on this video. But before we do that, let's watch this clip, and then we come back here with more commentary.
Right? Medgar Evers was a World War II veteran who was assassinated by a white World War II veteran. You have to tell that whole story. And once you start to tell that story, then your self-concept changes.
That's right. That's right.
And you see this, we know this. I mean, this is why they ban our history. They ban our history because black history by definition is political.
That's right.
Because black people by definition are political, right? Our history is political because every story of American greatness, every story of American exceptionalism you want to tell, here we are off to the corner. Say, how do you explain us?
That's right.
If all this is true, why are we here? How you bought and sold our ancestors. How you claim to be democratizing Europe, but denying violently democracy for black people here. So we're the most inconvenient people to the story of American exceptionalism.
Right.
So they want to ban our history because we give lie, right? We reveal the lie of this country.
Right.
And we are heroes of that story. So what the research shows is that when you teach black children black history, they do better academically.
Absolutely.
This is not shocking.
That's right. It's right.
Right? If you see yourself in the story, then you have a powerful sense of who you are.
Sure.
And I know, I mean, this is why they ban our history, because once I got a little taste of black history, I became incorrigible as a student. I was challenging everything, right? I would go up in social studies like, where are we? Why aren't you talking about this? What about this, right? And so all of a sudden, you don't just accept the narrative that they give you, and you start to challenge it.
Right.
And you start to have an understanding. So I, because of this class I took at 15 years old with a black educator named Mr. Ray Dow, where he introduced me to Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett.
Lerone, sure.
And the year 1619, I became the child who would go on to create 1619 Project.
Wow.
If I don't get that class, I don't create this project.
That's right.
And so they want to ban the class because they don't want more of us.
That's right.
They don't want more Dr. Blacks. They don't want more Nicole Hannah-Jones.
That's right.
They don't
That's right.
want people
That's
who
right.
can help our children know that there is nothing wrong with black folks. There's something wrong with our country.
That's right. That's right. That's right. 1954, right? Brown versus Board, right? And most of us in this room are, of course, are aware that thousands and thousands of black children were shipped to white schools, right? 1619 Project, of course, covers that. The question I would like to ask you is, what did white children miss by never being under the tutelage of black instruction?
That's such that's a powerful and an important question. And I think, you know, we're taught to think about Brown v. Board, of course, as being about the deficiencies in the education of black children.
Right.
But if you actually read Brown v. Board, if you read the arguments that the NAACP was making, if you look at the oral arguments, which I'm nerdy as hell, so I've read all of it. Are y'all okay? Yeah. Okay. It's okay. We can enjoy ourselves too. I tell a lot of jokes because this is hard, and if I didn't tell a lot of jokes, I'd be up here crying.
Right.
So I read all the oral arguments, and the NAACP was actually making two arguments. They were making the argument that the segregation was degrading to black Americans in a society built on racial caste, because the segregation wasn't just arguing we should have our own things. It was meant to treat us as inferior, right? It was meant to show that we were less than, and that oftentimes we were getting deprived of the equal amount of resources. For instance, in Georgia, there was a span of about 40 years where there wasn't a single high school in the state. They were funding high schools for white kids, but their own children didn't have a high school, right? Or they weren't getting, school buses, or they weren't getting textbooks. So we know that the resources weren't the same. So they were making that argument. But the parallel argument that they were making was that segregation was giving black children a false sense of their own inferiority, but it was also giving white children a false sense of their superiority.
Right.
Now the court didn't rule on that.
Right.
But what they were saying is that we are in a multiracial world. We are going out into the world, so you have to think 1954, what's happening. This is just at the beginning of the Cold War. We're starting to see, communism rising in America, and communists are engaging in this propaganda campaign. And so what they're really trying to say is that you are teaching white children that they're superior, and you're also not giving them an education to go out into a world that doesn't look like their classrooms. It doesn't look like their communities. So what white children were deprived of is one, just the ability to be around black people, and we're amazing. But they were also being deprived of the ability, and still are, because white children and black children remain segregated today, of an ability to get an education that prepares them for the world.
Yes.
An education that gives them empathy. I mean, this is why we have so much polarization, is white children can go most of their lives without ever having to have intimate relationships with anyone who's black, and certainly not someone who can be in a position of authority.
Right.
Because the funny thing about segregation is, because it so limited the opportunities for black Americans, black educators were actually far more educated than white educators.
That's right.
They had much higher degrees.
That's right.
They tended to, they would go and get their PhD or their master's degree, but could not work as a doctorate at a university or a scientist. So they would get these degrees, and then they would come back into the K-12 classroom.
That's right.
And so there's research that actually shows that they, on average, were far more educated and had far more advanced degrees than white teachers.
That's right.
Now, again, think about narrative. How many of y'all have ever heard that?
Yeah.
Right? It's true.
It is true.
But that's not the narrative. So the narrative was that our children were getting an inferior education. They were getting inferior resources.
Right.
But they did not have inferior educators.
Right. It makes me think.
That was a difference.
Absolutely. It makes me think of us at these HBCUs, right? Because of course I'm at an HBCU, and so are you. And the beauty and the power of HBCUs, I think that most people don't know, is that we were really making bricks without straw.
Yes.
Right? And we have been teaching
black children.
That's right. Did you hear me? Mm-hmm. We have been teaching black children not just textbook knowledge, but also knowledge of self, spiritual knowledge, right? Spiritual nurturing, right? The whole self, right? Yes. And I think this is critical, because in some ways we have not really, as black people, we've not really supported these institutions as fully as we need to. But these institutions have been the lifeblood of black people, right? And I'm saying that also because I'm segueing to an institution. I'm probably gonna get like 2 more questions. Good Lord help me. One of those is the black church. And I was telling you, I'm the church musician. I believe in the black church institutionally. I don't know that I believe in the black church theologically, right? That's another thing, right? But the question I want to ask you is, if you had your way, as the brilliant author of this text, if you had your way, what would you do with the black church?
Lord. Now you're trying to get me canceled. I'm getting fired.
You're fired, right?
And I'm gonna get canceled on the same day. On my day off, Saturday. Come on, man. So one, I would really suggest that folks read the essay in the book called Church by Anthea Butler. I
loved it.
I am not a theologian. In fact, when I occasionally get invited to give a talk at a church, I get worried that I'm gonna burst into flames when I'm in there. I'm not a religious person myself. I think that if we look historically at the role of the black church, the black church was always, even from the time of slavery, a place of political organizing,
absolutely.
Of liberation organizing.
Absolutely.
Because the black church was really the only place that black people could gather.
That's right.
And not be under white supervision.
Right.
And so they really were founded as these radical places that were not just about telling black folks to get their reward when they die.
Right.
Right, but believing that the God of, that led the Israelites out of slavery also believed that they should not be enslaved.
That's right.
Now, you have all heard what Nicole Jones had to say. And let me break down for my own perspective. No filter, just pure. Let's talk about the black history. Let's talk about how black history really how it scares white people, because it is deeper than just books, dates, and classroom debates. It's about identity. It's about power, and it's about the truth, and the truth versus the myth, because some are about the myth, but we are about the truth. See, when we talk about black history, we are not just talking about the slavery or civic rights or civil rights. We are talking about exposing the lies that the foundation of the country was built on, because they are telling you the foundation of America was built on the justice and the work of Americans. They'll tell you about the American dream. They'll tell you about everything good, the dream and everything about America. But they fail to tell you about who really built the country. They fail to tell you about who is really running the history of the country. And when we bring the truth to the table, that this land was stolen, that it was built from the sweat of black people, from the working hard of black people, or built by the enslaved Africans, that system were designed to keep us or to keep black people down. That's when people start going uncomfortable, because the truth shakes the narrative they have been raised on. The truth shakes the narrative they have been hiding for so long. They don't want other people to know about that. Black history is not just about black people. It's about it's a mirror. It's a mirror, and that's what scares them the most. Because when we start speaking our truth, it forces white America to confront theirs, and their confrontation is painful. When we start talking about the history of America, it starts showing the default in the system of America. And because it means admitting to their comfort, admitting that the white privilege is not theirs at the first time, admitting their wealth and their places in the country wasn't just earned through the hard work, it came at a cost, and a cost of black people's life. Let's be real. If you have been taught your whole life that your ancestors were pioneers, builders, and patriots, and then you find out they were colonizers, slaveholders, and oppressors, that messes with your identity, and that guilt creeps in, and that shame starts to settle. And instead of dealing with it like adults, many choose to run from it, hide it, or deny it altogether. And that's why you see the Gen Z right now, the white kids, are calling to let's start again, because they have come in a generation that they feel guilty, and they even don't understand what's going on, because they have been hidden away from the history. They are not being told the real history, how everything has come around. And that's why the white Gen Zs are like, okay, we have been told about we did this, we did that, but our people are not telling us. Our people are telling us they are the founders. Our people are telling us they are the innovators. But why are black people are owning this? And that's why we see this crazy push to ban books, censor lesson, and rewrite history or rewrite curriculum in schools. It's not about protecting children. It's about protecting white innocence. It's about avoiding accountability. Now, they say they are scared their kids will feel bad learning about racism. That's what they say. But let me ask this. How do you think black kids have felt for generation? How do you think black kids have felt for generation? Being taught a history that either ignores them, a history that starts their story as slavery, a history that we have had to see through lesson about Columbus discovering America, a history that shows nothing about them, a history that only circulates to them on slavery and colonization, while knowing our ancestors were already here or were being dragged here in chains, but we are being told about Columbus discovering the place. And that's how black kids have been living for generations. They are scared of their children feeling discomfort for a few minutes in the classroom. Meanwhile, our black children have been carrying generational trauma, miseducation, and invisibility in those same classroom for decades. You understand that? They are only scared for few minutes. And I'm very happy there's out an example of this lady called Jane Elliott took black and white students in one classroom, and she gave example, real life example. And you, on that video, I know you have come across it, white students were so much annoyed in just a few minutes of studying and an example. But black people have been living with that for so long, for decades and decades. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The white kids will feel offended for only 3 minutes in the classroom talking about the real history. But black students have been here for so long, for so long. So black history scares them because it demands truth, and truth demands change. And let's not ignore the other fear, our power. They fear what happens when we know who we are. They fear what happens when we know our real power, when our black kids know our real power. Because we know our history, our real history, we stop believing the lies they fed us. We learn about Black Wall Street, and we will realize that we have had wealth, entrepreneurship, and community. We learn about maroon communities and slave revolts, and we realize that we have always fought back. We learn about scientists, warriors, philosophers, and kings from the continent, and suddenly we don't see ourselves as victims, but as visionaries. Now, that's dangerous to learn. It is so dangerous to a system, and they want us broken, dependent, and confused. And that's why they are banning these books. That's why they are rewriting history, or that's why they are trying to erase our history. Now, let me say this. Black people or black history is empowering, and that's what really scares them, because when you know who you are, you stop asking for permissions. You stop waiting to be included. You stop, depending. You take the ownership. You build your own. And that's kind of self-awareness. That's kind of pride. It's a revolutionary. Now, let's be real for one time. They are not just scared of what happened in the past. They are scared of what it means today. You get that? Because if you admit that the past was unjust, then maybe reparation will come by, maybe white privilege will end, maybe the system, because if they agree of what happened in the past, reparation will make sense, systematic racism will make sense, and they didn't get there alone. They will realize that, and that's why you see folks losing their minds over kids learning the real history, because the system depends on ignorance and keep operating. And that's why you see when Trump came to power, said that he want to build or make America great again. It's not about bringing justice. It's about bringing the mind of the colonizer. It's about deleting the history and making America being like it was built into justice and law and order. He want to bring back the agenda of America is for white Americans and not for black people. He want to bring back the narrative of Columbus discovered America. That is why he said he want to make America great again. Ask yourself, how have black children failed for decades? Learning history that erases, distorts, and ignores the truth. We have had learn about Columbus as a hero. We don't learn about Africans' descendants as heroes. We have had to celebrate slave-owning presidents while being told to just move on. Don't talk to me about white discomfort. We have been living with discomfort since day one. Black Americans have been surviving this. It's not even about living. Black Americans have been surviving with discomforts for decades. Black history scares white folks because it forces them to pick a side. And you can't quote Dr. King's and ignore his radical demands. You can't love black culture and ignore black pain. And you definitely can't say you want equality while fighting against truth in education. We are not here to make anyone comfortable. We are here to tell the truth. I'm here to tell the truth about what's going on between Black history and the erasure. And the truth is powerful. It's not just about trauma, it's about slavery. It's genius, resistance, I may say it's beauty, it's Black resilience or Black excellence from the continent to the diaspora. And that's why they rally or they really fear, because once we know our story, the real one, we stop playing small. Once we know our story as Black people, we'll start connecting. Once we know our story as Black people, we'll start uniting. Start uniting in the sense of Black Americans and Africans will come together. And once that is happened, you can't reverse that. And to be just sincerely, you can't erase Black people. You can't hide the truth. You can't stop this movement. The movement has been there since day one. And even right now, you see us Gen Zs, we talking about this because we are teaching our children and we are teaching our brothers and sisters that we are sharing our stories and we are taking back the mic. We are the truth as Black people, and the truth don't die. And that's why I keep on talking about this. That's why you can't silence me saying that talk about Africans, don't talk about FBA. I'm not talking about FBA or Black Americans alone. I'm talking about the Black people. I'm talking about those who are colonized. I'm talking about those who are slavery. I'm talking about those who were in Caribbean. I'm talking about the Maroons. I'm talking about everyone who is from the continent. Our history scares them. Our history scares the supremacy because our history is real, unfiltered. Our history shows that we are the one who have built this. Our history shows that we are the one who have invented this. But they don't want their kids to know that. They want their kids to know them as heroes. They want their kids to know us as builders. They want their kids to know them as patriots. They don't want their kids to know about how they killed and suffocated some Black folks. They don't want their kids to know about the atrocities they did. Because if their kids know this, they will live in this pain that Black people are living right now. We as Black people, we are supposed not to be silenced. We need to wake up, to stand strong. Because when we keep silence, they will take over. And when they take over, they will erase our history. And when they erase our history, we'll have no place. In real sense, we'll have no place from the motherland to the country of America and to other countries that Black people are there. Because we will be dominated, not by a number of people, but in mind. And the bad thing is to be dominated in mind. The bad thing is to be dominated economically. The bad thing is to be dominated, to be brainwashed. We need to wake up. That's what we need. Tell me what you think on the comment section about this video. Until next episode, peace out.